Have you ever felt the heartbreak of forgetting a cherished memory, a loved one's face, or even a simple moment that once brought you joy? At 80 years old, I thought my sharp mind was gone forever until I discovered a forgotten oil that changed everything with just one spoonful. In this video, I'm sharing my emotional journey of reclaiming my memory, reliving precious moments, and feeling alive again. You need to watch until the end because I'll reveal the exact secret behind this life-changing oil, the simple steps you can take to unlock your brain's potential, and how this one discovery could transform your life or someone you love. Don't miss the hope and clarity waiting for you. Before we begin, I would appreciate it if you liked this video. You can help me continue to spread the old age lesson. If you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. If you like this video, please comment number 1. If you don't like it, comment number 0 to let me know so I can make a better video for you. Now, let's get started. The lapses began as whispers, so subtle I barely noticed them at first. They were fleeting moments, like a breeze passing through an open window, leaving no trace but a faint chill. Details I once held effortlessly in my mind, names, dates, the rhythm of my daily routines, began to slip through my fingers like water, impossible to grasp. It started with small things, innocuous enough to dismiss as quirks of age. I'd walk into a room, purposeful and determined, only to stand there, staring blankly, the reason for my presence vanishing into a mental fog. I'd open the refrigerator door, the cold air brushing my face, and find myself at a loss, unsure what I'd come to retrieve. Mornings brought a new kind of disorientation. I'd wake, blinking into the soft light filtering through my curtains, and struggle to pin down what day it was or what I had planned. Was it Tuesday? Did I have an appointment? The calendar on the wall became a puzzle, its grid of days mocking my confusion. Then came the words, or rather, their absence. In the middle of a conversation, a simple word would evade me, as if it had slipped out of my mind's reach just as I stretched for it. I'd be chatting with my daughter, trying to describe something as mundane as a chair, and all that came out was, that thing you sit on. I'd laugh it off, waving my hand dismissively, but the laughter was a mask. My grandchildren, with their bright, curious eyes, would look at me with a mix of tenderness and unease, sensing something amiss. I'd crack a joke, desperate to divert their worry. But inside, a quiet fear was taking root, growing stronger with each forgotten word, each misplaced intention. One afternoon stands out in my memory, sharp and painful, like a shard of glass. It was a trip to the supermarket, a routine I'd followed for decades. The store was familiar, its fluorescent lights, the hum of the freezers, the neatly stacked aisles I could navigate with my eyes closed. Or so I thought. I filled my cart, paid at the register, and stepped out onto the sidewalk, the weight of the grocery bags tugging at my arms. But then I froze. The world around me seemed to shift, the streets stretching out in unfamiliar directions. The signs above the shops, the flow of traffic, the faces of passers-by, all of it felt alien, as if I'd been dropped into a foreign city. My heart pounded, a lump rising in my throat. I stood there paralyzed, trying to summon the mental map that had guided me home countless times. Minutes passed, long, agonizing minutes, before a flicker of recognition returned, and I found my way back, my steps heavy with dread. When I reached home, my daughter was waiting. She took one look at my pale face, the tremble in my hands, and knew something was wrong. I tried to downplay it, mumbling about being a little distracted, but the truth spilled out in halting words. Her eyes filled with tears, and she wrapped her arms around me, her embrace both a comfort and a confirmation of my fears. "Dad, we have to do something," she said, her voice breaking. "This isn't normal." From that moment, my family's vigilance intensified. My eldest grandson, barely out of his teens, offered to help manage my bank accounts, his young face serious as he navigated online portals I no longer trusted myself to understand. My daughter began accompanying me to the store, her presence a quiet reassurance but also a reminder of my diminishing independence. My son-in-law made a habit of checking the appliances whenever he visited, ensuring I hadn't left the stove on or the iron plugged in. Their care was a lifeline, but it also stung. It made me feel like a child again, incapable of the simplest tasks. The world outside my home, once a place of freedom, became a labyrinth of potential missteps. I grew wary of leaving the house, haunted by the fear of getting lost again. Cooking, a passion that had once filled my evenings with the warmth of simmering sauces and the clatter of pans, turned perilous. One evening, I left a pot on the stove too long, the acrid smell of burning metal snapping me out of a daze just in time to prevent a fire. Conversations with friends, once a source of joy, became fraught with anxiety. I'd start a sentence only to lose its thread, the words dissolving mid-thought. Worse, I'd repeat stories, old anecdotes I thought were fresh, unaware of the polite nods and exchanged glances around me. My independence, my confidence, my sense of self, they were crumbling piece by piece. And the more I noticed, the deeper my fear grew. What would come next? Would I wake one day unable to recognize my own reflection, my own family? Yet amid this slow unraveling, something unexpected emerged, a glimmer of hope sparked by an unlikely source. It began with a visit to the neurologist, urged by my daughter's insistence. The waiting room was a gallery of faces like mine, older, lined with experience, shadowed by uncertainty. Some sat alone, their hands folded tightly in their laps. Others were accompanied by children or spouses, their eyes mirroring my own mix of fear and resignation. When my turn came, the doctor was kind but unflinching. He asked about my habits, my family history, and my symptoms. Then came the tests, deceptively simple tasks that exposed the cracks in my mind. He asked me to remember 3 words: apple, chair, clock. I nodded, confident, but when he asked me to repeat them minutes later, my mind was a blank slate. He handed me a sheet of paper and asked me to draw a clock marking 10 minutes past 11. My hand trembled as I sketched a lopsided circle, but the numbers eluded me, their order a jumbled puzzle. He asked basic questions: what day is it? What city are we in? Who is the president? Some answers came, others didn't. The weight of each failure settled in my chest, heavy and cold. The diagnosis was mild cognitive impairment, a term that sounded benign but carried a heavy shadow. The doctor explained it was an intermediate stage, not Alzheimer's, but a warning sign, a step on a path that could lead there. He spoke of progression rates, of studies showing that many with this condition deteriorate over time. The word Alzheimer's hung in the air, a specter I couldn't shake. He prescribed medications, cholinesterase inhibitors, antioxidants, memory supplements, and advised lifestyle changes, mental exercises, daily walks, a diet rich in fruits and vegetables. I left his office clutching a stack of pamphlets, my hands still sweaty, my mind racing with questions I was too afraid to ask. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. For weeks, I followed his advice with the diligence of a soldier. I swallowed pills each morning, omega-3 capsules, ginkgo biloba, phosphatidyls, my breakfast table resembling a pharmacy counter. I ate blueberries by the handful, their tartness a daily ritual of hope. I grilled salmon despite my lifelong aversion to its fishy taste, because of its vaunted omega-3 content. I tackled Sudoku puzzles and crosswords, downloaded brain training apps, and forced myself to read the newspaper, though focusing on the words felt like wading through mud. At first, these efforts gave me a sense of agency, as if I were fighting back against an invisible enemy. But the lapses persisted. I'd still forget why I'd entered a room, misplace my keys, repeat myself in conversations. The fear grew sharper, a constant companion. What if this was it? What if I were slipping toward a future where I'd lose not just memories, but myself? One afternoon, as despair began to settle like dust, I found myself in the neighborhood park, sitting on my usual bench beneath the sprawling branches of an old oak. Children laughed on the playground, their voices mingling with the rustle of leaves and the distant chirping of birds. It was there, in that quiet moment, that I ran into Anthony, a friend and neighbor I'd known for decades. At 82, he looked remarkably vibrant, his eyes sharp, his step steady, his conversation as lively as ever. We talked about the past, about friends we'd lost, about the fragility of life at our age. Emboldened by his warmth, I opened up about my struggles, the forgotten words, the disorienting trip to the supermarket, the doctor's diagnosis. Anthony listened, his face calm and attentive. And when I finished, he leaned in, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I went through something similar," he said softly, as if sharing a closely guarded secret. "But I found something that changed everything." The words that followed caught me off guard: extra virgin coconut oil. I blinked, unsure whether to laugh or press for details. Coconut oil? The stuff I'd once used to fry plantains or moisturize my hands. Could something so ordinary hold the key to my faltering mind? Sensing my skepticism, Anthony explained. He spoke of tropical cultures where coconut oil had been revered for generations, not just for cooking or cosmetics, but for its potential to nourish the brain. He mentioned medium-chain triglycerides, MCTs, fats that the body converts into ketones, an alternative energy source for a brain struggling to process glucose. He cited studies, his voice steady with conviction, claiming that MCTs could enhance mental clarity, focus, and even memory in people like us whose minds were beginning to falter. I went home that evening, Anthony's words echoing in my mind. Could it be that simple? I was skeptical, but a spark of curiosity flickered within me. The next morning, I drove to the health food store, my hands gripping the steering wheel a little tighter than usual. There, on a shelf lined with jars and bottles, I found it, a glass container labeled extra virgin coconut oil, cold-pressed. I read the label repeatedly, as if searching for a hidden truth in its fine print. I bought it, carried it home, and placed it on my kitchen counter, its presence both intriguing and daunting. Before diving in, I turned to my computer, determined to understand the science behind Anthony's claims. What I found was a revelation. Coconut oil's MCTs, unlike the long-chain fats in most oils, are rapidly absorbed and sent to the liver, where they're converted into ketones. These ketones can cross the blood-brain barrier, providing an alternative fuel for neurons when glucose metabolism falters, a common issue in aging brains and conditions like mild cognitive impairment or early Alzheimer's. I stumbled across a study in neurobiology of aging that explored MCT's effects on older adults with cognitive decline, finding improvements in memory and attention in some participants. Another study published in The Lancet Neurology discussed how ketones could bypass the brain's glucose processing deficits, offering a lifeline to struggling neurons. Armed with this knowledge, I began incorporating coconut oil into my life. Each morning, I stirred a tablespoon into my coffee, watching it melt into a glossy sheen. I spread it on toast, used it to sauté vegetables, and even mixed it into smoothies. The taste was subtle, faintly tropical, a reminder of distant shores. At first, I noticed no dramatic change, but after a few weeks, something shifted. The mental fog that had clouded my days seemed to lift, if only slightly. I found myself recalling small details, a neighbor's name, the plot of a book I'd read that had eluded me before. Conversations flowed more easily, the words less likely to slip away. The fear that had gripped me began to loosen its hold, replaced by a cautious optimism. I'm not saying coconut oil was a miracle cure. The lapses didn't vanish entirely, and I still relied on my family's support, my medications, and my mental exercises, but for the first time in months, I felt a sense of agency, a belief that I wasn't just a passenger in my own decline. My daughter noticed the change, her eyes brightening when I recounted a story without stumbling. My grandchildren teased me less about my senior moments, their laughter warmer, less tinged with worry. Anthony's chance encounter in the park had given me more than a remedy. It had given me hope, a reminder that even in the face of uncertainty, there are still paths to explore, still battles worth fighting. As I sit here now, sipping my coconut oil-laced coffee, I think about the journey that brought me here. The fear hasn't disappeared, and the future remains uncertain. But I'm no longer just waiting for the next lapse, the next loss. I'm living one day at a time, with a little more clarity and a lot more courage. The spark of hope that changed my life began with a story I stumbled across about Dr. Mary Newport, a neonatologist whose personal journey with her husband's health captivated me. Dr. Newport's husband, Steve, was battling progressive Alzheimer's disease, a condition that had eroded his memory and independence. In her search for solutions, she discovered the potential of medium-chain triglycerides, MCTs, found in coconut oil, to provide an alternative energy source for the brain. She began incorporating coconut oil into Steve's diet, and to her astonishment, she observed improvements in his lucidity, orientation, and even his ability to engage in daily activities. Her book Alzheimer's Disease, What If There Was a Cure detailed this journey, blending her medical expertise with heartfelt anecdotes that resonated with thousands worldwide. Reading Dr. Newport's account felt like a lifeline. Her husband's improvements weren't a complete reversal of his condition. Alzheimer's is complex, and no single intervention is a cure, but the small, tangible gains she described were enough to ignite my curiosity. I'd been grappling with my own memory challenges. Moments of fog that left me frustrated and fearful. Names slipped away mid-conversation. Familiar faces felt like strangers, and simple tasks, like recalling why I'd walked into a room, became maddeningly elusive. Then there was Anthony, a dear friend whose memory struggles mirrored my own. I'd noticed subtle changes in him after he began experimenting with coconut oil, brighter eyes, sharper responses, a renewed sense of presence. Combined with Dr. Newport's story and emerging studies on MCTs, I felt a flicker of possibility. The science, though not conclusive, was compelling. Research suggested that the brain, when starved of glucose due to conditions like Alzheimer's or age-related cognitive decline, could use ketones produced from MCTs and coconut oil as an alternative fuel source. Studies, like those published in journals such as Neurobiology of Aging, showed modest cognitive improvements in some patients with mild cognitive impairment when MCTs were introduced. Of course, the results weren't universal. Every brain, every body is different, and what worked for one person might not work for another. But the testimonials, the science, and Anthony's transformation convinced me. If there was even a slim chance, I had to try. That very day, I stood in my kitchen holding a bottle of extra virgin coconut oil I'd bought on a whim months earlier. The label promised cold-pressed, organic, unrefined, terms I'd later learn were critical to its quality. I scooped out a tablespoon, the oil glistening like liquid gold in the morning light. Its faint coconut aroma was sweet, but not overpowering. And as I swallowed it, I felt a mix of skepticism and hope. Little did I know that a single spoonful marked the beginning of a transformation that would redefine how I experienced my days. The first step, a spoonful of change. I vividly remember that first morning. I woke up at 6:30 a.m., as I always did, my mind already clouded with a familiar haze of confusion. The kitchen was quiet, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator. I unscrewed the cap of the coconut oil jar, its creamy texture catching the light. I'd read that many people took it on an empty stomach to maximize absorption, so I decided to start my day with it. The taste was smoother than I'd expected, mildly nutty with a subtle sweetness that lingered briefly. It wasn't unpleasant, but it was foreign, a reminder that I was stepping into uncharted territory. For the first week, I stuck to a simple routine, 1 tablespoon every morning before breakfast. I'd stand by the counter, take a deep breath, and swallow it, sometimes chasing it with a sip of water to ease it down. I wasn't sure what to expect or when to expect it. Would I feel different immediately? Would my memory sharpen overnight? The uncertainty was daunting, but I pressed on, driven by the stories I'd read and the quiet resolve to reclaim a piece of myself. As the days passed, I began to experiment. I learned that coconut oil could be more than a standalone spoonful. One morning, inspired by a recipe I found online, I stirred a teaspoon into my black coffee, watching it melt into a glossy sheen. The result was a creamy, slightly tropical flavor that made my morning ritual feel indulgent rather than medicinal. Other days, I drizzled it over oatmeal, its richness complementing the oat's simplicity. I even started using it to cook. Scrambling eggs and a small dollop of coconut oil gave them a delicate, nutty flavor. Incorporating it into my routine felt seamless, almost enjoyable, and I began to look forward to these small moments of self-care. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. Early signs, a glimmer of clarity. The first week passed without fanfare. My memory lapses persisted, misplacing my glasses, often perched on my head, forgetting why I'd opened the fridge, or struggling to recall a neighbor's name. But around the second week, something subtle shifted. I was on the phone with my daughter Sarah when she casually mentioned Mr. Ernest, a neighbor from years ago who used to walk his dog past our house every afternoon. Without hesitation, I replied, "Oh, Mr. Nest. He had that big German shepherd, Bruno, and always wore that worn-out brown cap." There was a pause on the line. Then Sarah laughed, her voice tinged with surprise. "Dad, since when do you remember details like that?" We chuckled, but her words lingered. She was right. Before, my mind would have drawn a blank, or I'd have pieced together a vague, incomplete memory. This time, the details had surfaced effortlessly, like a photograph coming into focus. It wasn't a dramatic revelation, but it was enough to make me pause and wonder. Over the next few days, I noticed more small victories. At the grocery store, I relied less on my scribbled shopping list, recalling items with a clarity that felt foreign. During visits with my grandchildren, their names, Emma, Lucas, and little Sophie, rolled off my tongue without the usual hesitation. In conversations with friends at the community center, I found myself completing sentences without that dreaded mid-thought blankness. These moments were subtle but profound, like rediscovering a skill I'd thought was lost forever. A turning point, rediscovering the past. The real turning point came one Sunday afternoon, surrounded by family. My children and their spouses had come over for lunch, a rare gathering that filled the house with laughter and warmth. As we lingered over plates of roast chicken and mashed potatoes, the conversation turned to a long-ago family trip to a countryside cabin. My kids reminisced about the lake, the rickety rowboat, and the campfire songs. For months, I'd listened to these stories silently, unable to contribute as my memories felt locked away. But that day, something clicked. I began to speak, my voice steady and clear. "That was Lake Thompson, wasn't it? We drove up in that old blue Ford station wagon, and we were singing Sweet Caroline on the way because the kids wouldn't stop begging for it." My daughter's fork froze midair. My son-in-law burst into laughter, clapping his hands. "Dad, you're pulling out details we forgot." Sarah's eyes sparkled with a mix of disbelief and joy. "It's like you've gotten 10 years of memory back." In that moment, I felt a rush of pride and relief. These weren't fleeting flashes of clarity. They were signs that my mind was waking up, reconnecting with parts of myself I'd feared were gone. I wasn't just recalling facts. I was reliving moments, feeling the texture of those memories, the crunch of gravel underfoot, the warmth of that summer sun, the sound of my children's laughter. It was as if my brain, long shrouded in fog, was beginning to clear. Beyond coconut oil, a holistic transformation. While coconut oil was the catalyst, I soon realized that true change required more than a single ingredient. My memory improvements were encouraging, but I wanted to sustain and build on them. I began to see my brain as a muscle that needed exercise, nourishment, and rest. And I committed to a broader lifestyle overhaul. Nutrition. For years, my diet had been a mishmash of convenience foods, sugary cereals, packaged snacks, and fast food burgers. I loved my morning coffee with 2 heaping spoonfuls of sugar and an afternoon cookie or 3. But research suggested that high sugar intake and processed foods could exacerbate cognitive decline. So, I started small. I cut back on sugar, swapping it for a pinch of cinnamon in my coffee, which added a warm, spicy note without the glycemic spike. I filled my plate with brain-boosting foods, spinach, kale, broccoli, carrots, and fatty fish like salmon, rich in omega-3s. Blueberries became a daily staple, their antioxidants a small gift to my neurons. These changes weren't just for my brain. I felt more energetic, my body lighter, and more responsive. Mental exercise. I began treating my mind like a muscle that needed regular workouts. Crosswords became my morning ritual, starting with simple puzzles that frustrated me at first, but grew easier with practice. I dusted off old novels, light mysteries and historical fiction that forced me to focus and follow a storyline. I even set a weekly goal to learn a new word like serendipity or ephemeral and wove it into conversations or jotted it in a notebook. These small challenges kept my brain engaged, sharpening its edges. Social connection. Memory struggles had made me withdraw, embarrassed by my lapses and afraid of stumbling in conversations. But isolation, I learned, only worsens cognitive decline. I pushed myself to reconnect. I called old friends, joined neighbors for coffee, and made a point to attend family gatherings, even when self-doubt crept in. Every chat, every shared laugh felt like a workout for my brain, reinforcing neural pathways and lifting my spirits. Physical activity. I'd never been athletic, but I knew movement was critical. I started with short walks to the corner, savoring the fresh air and the rhythm of my steps. Over weeks, those walks stretched to 30 minutes, sometimes along a nearby park trail where birdsong and sunlight lifted my mood. Exercise, I learned, increases blood flow to the brain, delivering oxygen and nutrients that support cognitive health. After each walk, my mind felt clearer, as if the cobwebs had been swept away. Sleep. Sleep had been a casualty of late-night TV binges and endless phone scrolling. I'd wake up groggy, my mind sluggish. So, I established a bedtime routine, no screens an hour before bed, a cup of chamomile tea, and a few pages of a book under soft lamplight. I aimed for 7 to 8 hours of sleep, going to bed and waking at consistent times. The difference was striking. My mornings felt brighter, my thoughts sharper, as if sleep was stitching my memories back together. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 3 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. A word of caution. Choosing wisely. Before you rush to try coconut oil, let me share some hard-earned wisdom. Not all coconut oils are created equal. Refined oils, often labeled as bleached or deodorized, undergo processing that strips away nutrients and may introduce harmful chemicals. I chose extra virgin, cold-pressed, organic coconut oil, which retains its MCTs, antioxidants, and lauric acid, a compound with potential antimicrobial and brain-supporting properties. Read labels carefully and avoid oils with additives or vague descriptions. Equally important, consult your doctor. Coconut oil is a fat, high in calories, about 120 per tablespoon, and may not suit everyone. If you have high cholesterol, liver issues, or other conditions, medical guidance is essential. I met with my primary care physician before starting, sharing my plan and getting blood work to ensure it was safe. This gave me confidence to proceed without worry. Start small, half a tablespoon daily, to let your body adjust. Too much too soon can cause digestive upset like diarrhea or nausea. I settled on 1 tablespoon daily, taken in the morning, and found it sustainable. Most importantly, coconut oil isn't a magic bullet. It's a tool most effective when paired with a healthy lifestyle. My results came from patience, consistency, and a commitment to holistic change. Reflecting on the journey. A year ago, I lived in the shadow of fear of forgetting faces, words, and pieces of my life. There were days I couldn't recall a neighbor's name or found myself silenced mid-sentence, grasping for a word that wouldn't come. The worst was the quiet dread that I was slipping away, that my identity was unraveling with each forgotten moment. Today, at 80, I feel like I've reclaimed a part of myself. I remember my grandson's birthday without checking a calendar. I share stories from my youth, vivid tales of fishing trips and first dates, with a clarity that surprises my family. I'm not perfect. Some days, the fog creeps back and I fumble for a name or misplace my keys. But the difference is undeniable. I'm present, engaged, and hopeful. This wasn't a miracle. It was the result of small, deliberate choices. A spoonful of coconut oil, a walk in the sun, a crossword puzzle, a good night's sleep. It was the courage to try something new, to reject the idea that decline is inevitable. If I can find this clarity at 80, you can too. Start where you are. Take one step and keep going. Every moment you reclaim is worth it. Wow, what an incredible journey we've shared today. I hope my story of recovering my memory at 80 with just a spoonful of this forgotten oil has inspired you to believe in the power of hope and transformation. So, tell me, what's one thing you've learned from this video that you're excited to bring into your life? Maybe it's the secret of this forgotten oil or a new spark to boost your brain health. Drop it in the comments below. I can't wait to hear from you. If you like this video, please leave your comment below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more life-changing stories and tips to keep you thriving.